Hello, I'm Toybox and welcome to Movie Talk with Toybox. In this video, I'm going to fix Spider-Man Brand New Day in just under 6 minutes. Overall, I did enjoy the movie. There were some things I really liked about it and some things I really did not, especially when it comes to Jean Grey. So let's begin. For me, the crux of the problem was Jean Grey's story.
I told you
I
what would
actually
happen to your
wouldn't
girl if you
change
doubted
much
my
of the
word.
rest of the movie. I would still keep in the Spider-Man DNA changes, his interactions with Bruce Banner and Frank Castle. All of that can stay. The biggest change that I would make is Jean. In the movie, Jean Grey uses people as avatars to accomplish some pretty villainous things. In my version, she still uses people as avatars. However, there's a clear purpose for it, and there's no permanent damage that comes to the civilians. So let's start with the first incident. Jean takes control of someone and deliberately puts them in danger, knowing that Spider-Man will come and save them. After Spider-Man rescues them, she tells them using the person that there is an organization kidnapping people with special abilities to conduct experiments on them. Peter doesn't really think much of this, so Jean does it again the next day, and then a third time. At that point, Peter realizes that something is going on, and he decides to investigate and contacts Yelena. Yelena agrees to help find this mysterious group or people that are doing these experiments. Yelena quickly discovers that there's a government organization called the DODC, or the Department of Damage Control, and that there's a possibility that they could be involved. Peter goes to Damage Control, meets Director Metzger, and he is convinced that they're actually the good guys. So Spider-Man tells Jean this, that there's no way that the DODC is behind it. And that's when Jean decides to escalate. She then decides she's going to use Scorpion. So she mind controls prison guards to release the Scorpion. Then she mind controls Scorpion. Spider-Man is alerted by Captain DeWolf and goes after him. During the fight, Jean tells Spider-Man that he left her no other choice. She had to do this because Spider-Man sided with the people that she believes is responsible for the disappearance of her sister. After the fight, Jean decides to take it one step further. She's using people to jump telepathically to follow Spider-Man to find out where he lives. And there she discovers his secret identity and also discovers MJ. Now, Jean has something to use against Peter. However, the audience doesn't know what she's planning. Jean locates where MJ is and places her in a deli that Peter frequents. Peter sees her and believes that this must be fate, so he decides to talk to her, and MJ is surprisingly very receptive. She even asks Peter to come sit with her. As they talk, we begin to see maybe glimpses of memories returning, moments of deja vu, things she shouldn't remember, but somehow does. Peter comes convinced that he will be able to bring those memories back to MJ and asks if they can go somewhere more private to talk. They go back to her apartment and eventually MJ remembers, they share a moment, and then they kiss. But immediately after that kiss, something along the lines of, "I'm sorry, but you left me no other choice," comes out of MJ's mouth, and Jean leaves her body. MJ completely freaks out. There's a stranger in her apartment who just kissed her, but Peter somehow convinces MJ that she is in possible danger and takes her to Frank Castle's hideout. And just as a reminder, everything else that happens in the story goes exactly the way it did in the movie. Meanwhile, Bruce Banner is called to the DODC to speak with Director Metzger, or at least he thinks. But Jean has also planned this. Bruce enters the building and she enters his mind telepathically. She convinces him to remove his inhibitor, and next thing you know, Hulk is smashing. So the captain now contacts Spider-Man and tells him that the Hulk is in the DODC along with an unidentified person. So the Punisher, Spider-Man, and Hulk have their battle. However, he is eventually subdued and Peter goes after Jean. He fights his way through the hand, defeats them, and eventually gets to the room where Jean is holding Director Metzger hostage. And if we really want, we can still have the Punisher shoot Peter on accident. This version fixes what I think is the biggest problem with Jean's character. So Jean is still manipulating people, she's still crossing lines and doing morally questionable things. However, there's no permanent damage to these people. She's investigating her sister's disappearance, and you can sympathize with her character. She believes that the government is involved and increasingly becomes more desperate for Peter to help her. To me, that is a much more compelling dissent than simply just having Jean doing evil things because the plot needs her to. And this is especially important. As a huge X-Men fan, I'm not really sure how you redeem Jean Grey after any of this. Now, I can already see it in the comments. But Jean actually does have a dark side. And yes, she does, but it's only when she is the Phoenix. So yes, Jean has a dark side, but traditionally, she's a fundamentally good person. It's not until she becomes a Dark Phoenix that she starts doing villainous things, and really it's because the Dark Phoenix is taking control over her. So when you have Jean committing a bunch of vicious acts, it creates a pretty big problem for the character moving forward. My version still lets her make bad choices, but at least those choices have motivation and no permanent damage. And ultimately, that's what I want for Jean's story. A confused, albeit vengeful mutant, but not an evil one. And if you've made it this far, thank you for watching Movie Talk with Toybox, where we workshop Spider-Man Brand New Day in just under 6 minutes. And would you do me a favor and hit that like button?